said, "This is a city for all. We will fight and we will defend everyone." And even our mayor, Steve Jewell, who's been on the show, said the Durham leaders support Oliver Bruno and his family and are unified in protest against the actions of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This is against everything we stand for in Durham, Jewell said. Durham embraces all people, he said, including all races, refugees, LGBT people, and immigrants, regardless of documented status. So it says the Citywell United Methodist Church in Durham gave sanctuary to Oliver Bruno, 47, for the past year. So he had been living in this church for a year after he was ordered to return to Mexico by ICE. He has lived in the United States for more than 20 years. He legally resided in the U.S. for at least 3 years, receiving stays of removal and a work permit until the winter of 2017. Now, this is what you might find interesting. On November 23rd, Oliver Bruno left the church in Durham for an appointment with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services in Morrisville. He was arrested shortly after entering the building. So, Citywell pastor, the Reverend Clev May, said Thursday that Oliver Bruno was ambushed as he was trying to follow the process. So he was actually trying to follow the rules.
Isn't that something? See, that's the kind of stuff I told you that makes you want to cuss. Man, that's just not right, man. Right is right, wrong is wrong, and that's just wrong, bro. That's wrong, bro.
Oh, I think I have the doorbell.
We got somebody at the door. We are going to find out who it is in 1 second.
Are you enjoying the smoothest conversation in podcasting? Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. Hi, this is DJ Smooth Jazz, syndicated radio host and co-owner of Portfolio Group LLC, your smooth jazz lifestyle and entertainment group with offices in Durham, North Carolina. Portfolio Group LLC specializes in promoting the lifestyle of smooth jazz listeners with the promotion of smooth jazz events and the distribution of African American owned wines. For more information, portfoliogroup.llc.com, or you can swing by my secondary site, djsmoothjazz.com. Now back to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark.
And we are back. Thank you for contacting. Thank you for calling this evening. Welcome to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. Who do we have on the line right now?
This is Ellie Zarling.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Just another day.
Who is this again?
This is Ellie Zarling. I'm an improviser and comic and teacher out of Richmond, Virginia.
Yes, I did tell you to call, and I definitely appreciate it. Would you tell us a little bit about your improvising career and also a little bit about how you got involved in comedy? Because, like I said, I saw you online, and you definitely done a lot with your comedy and your routine. But we've had Jatobia on, an improviser, on before, but I'm got president in improvising, but I know it's a great art form, but I want to know how you got involved and what you find really unique about it.
Well, how I got involved is I was living in Charlottesville and walking downtown, and there was one of those signs where it says, "Do you want to do improv?" And at the bottom are a bunch of the phone number printed 12 times, and I tore one off, and I went and took some classes, and that was, 15 years ago. And, yeah. And so I've been, I did stuff in Charlottesville. I did stuff, I auditioned at the Coalition Theater in Richmond in 2010, 2011, and right now I'm doing my own one-person show, and I teach improv workshops for trans and non-binary people, and I also do a summer camp down in Alabama that teaches kind of like improv and using improv for leadership and comedy and kind of like art activism down there.
Okay, and we've had several art activists on the show before, so how important do you feel it is for artists to be activists, and how do you use the improv as part of your activism? Because, like I said, we've had Desan on, who's a spoken word artist, and we've had others on that have been very much involved in the activism community, but they're also artists. So I was just wondering how you personally use art to highlight your activism.
You know, it's funny. It's not something that it really hit me as something, like I've always felt like you have to have something important to talk to in comedy. But the idea of like really pushing it didn't come until about 3 years ago when I started teaching down in Alabama and working with these kids and kind of realizing that this is a way for people who don't have an opportunity to have a voice to get that voice. And, you know, I kind of went through the same journey but didn't realize it because I was living my life, you know. I feel like sometimes you're just living your life. You don't realize all the change that's going on around you, you know. And I kind of went through that personal transformation where I was always like the shy, quiet person who would never talk. And, you know, I didn't come out as trans until 3 years ago. So, like, I had that weighing on me, these emotions I didn't understand, and kind of getting on stage and doing improv helped me with that. And then getting with these kids and being like, you know, here's what you can joke about. Here's how you can use this comedy to find your voice and, you know, criticize things that are happening in your community, criticize things that are happening in your country, or just, you know, hold a mirror up to yourself and make fun of yourself and realize what you have to change in your own life. And so it's kind of like a powerful way, and it's also a way for people to get someone else to listen to you who maybe doesn't have your background. You know, like if I'm doing a comedy show, maybe, you know, I was in North Carolina a few weeks ago, and I was just like, hey, who here even knows another trans person? And it was like less than half the audience. And so it provides me an opportunity to have a friendly, fun conversation with people who would never have met me otherwise or never met anyone who is trans. And that same goes for, like I said, a lot of these African-American kids that I work with in Alabama, the trans people I work with. It's just like helping them find their voice so that they can talk about their own struggle. I feel like everyone's story is important and everyone should have a chance to say it, you know, to tell their story.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that. Now, one of the things I know from having friends that are involved in improv is that sometimes, because improv is very much of an art form that, for lack of a better word, is in your face. And a lot of times you're doing routines that sometimes you're being given words, and sometimes the words can lead to routines that some folks may find insulted with and everything. Because I know that even some of my friends that have done improv here, they will sometimes find that to be a difficult situation where somebody may give them a word that has to do with race relations or has to do with stereotypes and things of that nature. So I was wondering, as an improv artist and as a trans improv artist, how do you cope with that when folks might throw you a word that is, because that's what a lot of improv is that there's a saying that y'all use all the time in improv, and it's like,
yes, I am.
Yes, I am, and everything. Yeah. So how do you cope with that when folks are throwing words at you that may create a dilemma or may create a situation that you're not all that comfortable with? Because I've seen that happen even with some of my African-American improv artists where somebody may throw a term at them that could lead to a routine that might have some, for lack of a better term, racist overtones.
Sure. Well, so I have two different scenarios with the same problem, and we'll do the first one is like audience suggestion. And right. I'm always like, if the audience sends me a suggestion, I'm going to use it. And the goal, you know, really the approach has to be like, what's the smartest way I can do this? I mean, if you do a night and there's like a bunch of college dudes and they've all been drinking and you ask for a suggestion, you're going to get dildo. They're going to yell that out. And so it's like, how can I make something smart that isn't about using that particular implement? How can I do something about, we can be a couple who's trying to bring the spark back in our marriage, and we don't have to be graphic or descriptive. I think a lot of times improvisers, especially when they start out, they feel like the suggestion is this object and the scene has to be about this object. And my approach is like, you give me this object makes me think of things, right? So who would use this sex object that you threw at me? What would be the way it is? Maybe I'm someone who works in that kind of shop, and like I just try to strike up conversation with customers. So with the audience suggestion, I hate dismissing it because I feel like if you're going to ask for that, then you just have to be ready for it, and you just have to rely on yourself to be smart enough to be like, I'm smarter than the audience. They think this is going to happen. And it's not going to happen because I'm smarter than them. They are, and I'm a better performer than they know I am. Then the other situation that comes along a lot is dealing with your fellow improvisers. You know, because we're trained to agree with what they're doing. And I've talked a lot about this lately. It must be just in the air with me. Like a few years ago, I did a show where it was me and a friend, and we said anyone can come up on stage at any time and join the scene. And then every 5 minutes, the lights will go out, everyone clears off, and we start a new scene, and then anyone who wants to jump in can. And this guy got up, and we were in prison or something, and he tried to make the scene about prison rape, and I just stopped the show, and I said, you have to get off the stage. We're not doing that. You know? I had, and then a couple weeks ago, or maybe a couple months ago, I had someone who tried to make a race joke, and I just, in character, said, you know, that's on you. I'm not going to do this. And I walked off stage. And I think, you know, we have to realize the powers that we don't have to participate in these things. We can call people out for their BS. I get a lot of women who improvise with guys, and the guys are always making them prostitutes, or they're on a date, and they're like, how do I deal with this person who is initiated like a sex scene with me because I have to yes and them? Like, how do I get through that because it's gross and I don't want to do that? It's like, well, the yes is you agree that this person wants to have sex, and the and is that, and I'm not going to do it because you're disgusting and you make me sick, you know? So you kind of just have to, like, I realize, like, especially if you're beginning, that's very uncomfortable to have that thrown at you. And I really just want people to realize, like, you have the power in you to stand for yourself and to make those choices. And the yes is agreeing with their situation. Yes, we are on a date. Yes, you do want to have sex, but I don't have to have sex with you. The and is you're disgusting. Last time we had sex, you couldn't even get an erection. I'm sorry if I'm being too graphic for your show, but, like, really about standing up for yourself and putting those people who try to pin you in those situations and tell them that's not going to happen, and then show them that you're better than that, you know?
Now, one of the things that I know you just recently performed at the Pit in Chapel Hill, and just out of curiosity, is that is also something that I know that part of the Me Too movement was also how the Me Too movement impacted comedy, because I know, without getting into specifics about what happened at the Pit, that there was a lot of times that women were feeling that they were being put in bad situations by some of the leaders of some of the comedy organizations, whatever those organizations were and everything. So just as one that has been involved in the comedy circuit, how were you able to deal with that and everything? Because I imagine that's probably got to be a very popular topic even to this day, because it's still fresh on people's minds. And so, of course, people are still hearing about what's going on in Hollywood, whether that was with Cosby, whether that was with Harvey, and I'm forgetting Harvey's last name right now, but
Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein or some of the others and everything. So when you're talking to some of the people that are performers that are feeling like they are in a precarious situation, because, of course, they want to do their comedy. In some cases, these are women that have been doing it for years, but they also feel that they might be being put in difficult situations, both by the routines as well as by what is expected from them by audience and leadership. So I was just wondering how you cope with that, as you have been involved in this field for a number of years.
Sure. And, you know, when that thing happened down in North Carolina, there were like 2 other theaters that I knew people at who a similar thing happened. And I think one thing is that, you know, improv, it's not a kind of thing where you open up a theater because you're going to make a ton of money. A lot of these people they open theaters because they love improv, but they really don't have business savvy. And a lot of times it's like there's one person who's in charge. So it's got this a very poor setup to begin with. There's one person who's in charge, and everything's top down. You want to be on that person's good side because you want to get stage time. And so there's like this controlling environment. And the other thing I would tell people, if you're in an environment like that, is kind of like I said with the scene, like, you have to empower yourself to walk away. You know, I don't want to say I've quit improv theaters, but I've stopped performing with places. I've stopped doing shows because I didn't want to. And you know what? It's never stopped me. Like, I've never stopped doing a show somewhere else, like, and then never been able to find a show. Like, I can always find a show. You can always put in the work. Like, finding a space, like, if you're an improviser, like, say you and 4 or 5 friends perform at a theater and you don't like what they're doing, you could find a performance space that'll let you use that. Now, I mean, it's great when it's the theater and they have their advertising and they have their built-in audience. That's great. But you have to kind of balance, like, what am I going to put up with versus what makes me happy. And for me, like, the doing of the improv is what it's about. And if I'm performing in front of 10 people, you know what? That's great, because we're going to have a great time. And that's kind of like my guarantee. This is going to be fun. And I don't need to have 1 million people. I mean, it's great when they're all there, but You know, you have to realize, you know, like the theater doesn't own you. You know, they don't